89,305 pounds of chicken was imported into this country. This includes fresh, chilled, or frozen, both whole and in parts, at a total of some 32,001,332. Additionally, 2,381,512 pounds of chicken eggs were imported at a value of $4,566,284. The aftermath of Hurricane Dorian and now COVID-19 pandemic has revealed the real need for self-sufficiency in agriculture in the Bahamas. And to this end, we at the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources saw it necessary to assist farmers by providing layers in the first instance to farmers both in New Providence and in the Family Islands to help bolster their egg production. My name is Joel Lewis. I am the Acting Permanent Secretary of the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources. And we are delighted to have our guest speaker today, Dr. Claudia Dunkley. Dr. Dunkley received her Doctor of Philosophy in Poultry Science from Texas A&M University, College Station, Texas, and has been an extension poultry scientist at the University of Georgia since 2007. She works closely with the poultry industry within the state, across the country, and also internationally, conducting workshops and symposia for extension agents, commercial poultry companies, and poultry producers. She conducts applied research with poultry producers in the area of poultry environmental issues, including greenhouse gases emission, carbon footprint of the poultry industry, litter management, dead bird disposal, and management of commercial layer flocks. She is actively involved in conducting small backyard flock management seminars and is also involved in youth educational poultry programs across the state of Georgia. Additionally, we have with us Dr. Singh, a partner at the Ministry of Agriculture and Marine Resources, who is a CARDI representative, and Dr. Singh is a well-published scientist who actively participates in regional and international conferences and workshops, agriculture and food security. She has taught modules in animal production, husbandry, nutrition, anatomy, physiology, and production of the Department of Food Production Facility of Food and Agriculture in the University of the West Indies. Dr. Singh has for many years with tremendous technical and practical experiences in animal slaughter, carcass fabrication, and novel product development for small island development states. So I want to take this opportunity to say welcome, and I now turn the floor over to Dr. Singh.
Good morning to everyone. My name is Michelle. I am the CARDI representative, as PS so eloquently described. It gives me great pleasure to co-chair this morning's session, and a warm welcome to Dr. Dunkley, who so graciously gave of her time. I know we have a number of people trying to log on and still logging on. Of course, let's remember the little housekeeping rules. Keep your mics muted and your cameras off. I will appreciate if you can hold all questions till after the presentation. Dr. Dunkley will present for about 45 minutes, and she's very well versed in her area of expertise. We also have participants from throughout the Caribbean. So it's not just the Bahamas who have logged on. I see Trinidad and Tobago, I see Barbados, I see Jamaica, Antigua. So we have a wide variety of people from different countries and different institutes. So I say welcome, welcome to one and all. Dr. Dunkley, I'll turn it over to you. So again, let's hold the questions till after and we can entertain them. Thanks.
Okay, good morning, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here, even if it's virtually, giving this presentation. I'll try to go through quickly, and as Dr. Singh says, the questions can be saved till the end of the presentation. This is part one in an overview of layer flock production, and we could be here for hours talking about commercial layer flock and small flock production. So we had it broken up in two parts, and in this first section, we will be looking at three topics. I can get this to advance, right? We'll be looking at commercial layer systems, starting a small layer flock, and egg production. Okay, so let us begin with our commercial layer systems. Now, conventional cages are the most common type of commercial egg layer systems, and they are used because they allow for the highest capacity or number of birds to be reared in one facility. There are two types of high-rise cages. There are two types of commercial conventional cages. We have the high-rise cages and the battery cages. And in these systems, birds are placed in cages that are typically 24 inches wide by 20 inches deep and 17 inches high. And they will hold about 6 birds. We put about 6 birds in these cages. So the battery cages, like each cages are located directly above cages of other birds, as you can see in this schematic diagram here. And they're capable of holding many more birds than any other housing system. On one facility, you can have 1 million or more birds in these cages. And the density is determined by the number of tiers, how high up you go, by the number of rows. So as you can see, they can hold a whole lot of birds. And the manure is handled by conveyor belt system, which is below each cage. So the birds below are spared that droppings from falling on them because of these conveyor belts that moves the droppings away and is collected in a separate place. And this is one advantage of this type of system when we look at the cage system, because it moves the manure away and it is dried quickly wherever it is collected. And it is collected more frequently also. Then we have the high-rise cages, and they are better suited for a lower stocking density. And here is that schematic diagram. So it's usually in what we call an A-frame. And most of these now are fitted with a manure curtain, as you can see right here. That's a manure curtain. So when the bird defecates, it falls on the curtain and it falls between the cages. So the birds below, the feces are not dropping on these birds. The manure in this type of system can be collected in a pit which is below the cages, or it's sometimes collected in a trough. The problems that we have with this type of system is that the manure, if it is not handled properly, you'll end up with a lot of flies and odors, because this manure is not removed immediately as with the other system, with the conveyor belt. So for example, in this system, the manure is collected down here in this section, and it is flushed out after maybe a week or so and collected in a lagoon or in another manure collection area. In this example, you see where the birds are in that A-frame, so the manure drops directly below in a cellar where it is collected and stored for a year before it is removed, when the birds are being removed from these houses. The problem that can occur is that if it's not dried, you have a lot of flies and a lot of odor, and of course you start having accumulation of maggots, and that's not a problem that you need to have on your layer farm. So that's that disadvantage there. Then we have the aviary housing system, and this type of system is considered a cage-free system, and the hens are placed in colonies, and they are usually separated by barriers. So this is one colony of birds. Behind this fence is another colony. Now, this type of system cannot accommodate as many birds as in the cage system, but it is considered more welfare friendly, and the birds have a little area where they can come down and they can practice some normal behaviors that birds would do and that they wouldn't be able to do in cages. They have perches that they can fly up to. They have nest boxes where they lay. The eggs are collected by an egg belt, and the manure is also collected by a manure belt, and the birds will also defecate in the littered area. And this is, so that manure is not removed until the end of the flock. And then we have our pastured system. And this is the most natural commercial laying system that's the most natural you can get for the birds. And birds are typically in an enclosed area of about a quarter acre or more, and they remain there for about a month before they are moved onto the next area, which would be adjacent to this pastured area. So they are provided with shelter from the elements, and there are nest boxes there. They are provided with food and water, and they can scratch and eat insects. They eat the grass too. So as you can see in this picture, these birds have been there for a little while, so the grass looks different than the grass on this side, which they are moving to. And of course, the manure that they leave in this section will help to fertilize that grass, and the birds will be rotated on it eventually another time. All right. So how do you start a small layer flock? Well, before you even begin, you should know why you want to grow chickens, right? Do you want to produce eggs? And if you're producing eggs, why are you producing them? Do you want to eat the eggs, or do you want to get chicks? Now, if you want to hatch eggs for chicks, then you'll need a rooster. If you just want the eggs to eat, there is no need for a rooster, because a hen will lay an egg whether or not a rooster is around. If you want fertile eggs that will hatch into chicks, then you'll need to get that rooster in there. And we don't want one rooster to one hen, because that will be catastrophic. Your stocking density should be about 10 hens to one rooster, or 8 the minimum or the maximum. Okay. You can do both things. You can eat a fertile egg, but the eggs must be collected quickly to prevent the hens from incubating them. And if you incubate the eggs, well, you know that the embryo will start to develop into a chick, and you don't want to do that. So if you want to have chicks and you want to have fresh eggs, well, you have to collect the eggs quickly. So where are you going to place these eggs? These birds, rather. So we want to provide enough room to accommodate for the growth of the birds. and the minimum amount of space that you provide depends on the type or the breed of the bird. So a spacing of about 0.5 to 1 square foot is recommended for small birds, or if you have a larger breed, 3 to 3.5 square foot for those birds. So for example, if you start with 50 chicks and decide to use 25 of them for meat production and then 25 for egg production, so you're growing them, and by the time they get to say 10 weeks, you're gonna kill some of them or euthanize some of them, slaughter some of them to eat. The other 25 that's left are the ones that you're raising for your egg production. And of course, some you might lose some. So you want to allow about 3 square foot for these 25 birds that you have remaining. So you would need about 75 square feet for that 25 birds. So an 8 by 10 square foot house or building would be adequate for them. But whenever you're building, you must remember that you might want to expand. So make your construction with that in mind. Now, when you get your chicks, you have to brood them first. You have to give them adequate heating, because chicks cannot generate heat for themselves. So you have to make sure that they are warm enough. Otherwise, they'll get sick and they'll die. So the temperature in the house or in the room that you have them should not be allowed to fall below 70 degrees Fahrenheit. And a temperature of 90 degrees Fahrenheit should be maintained at the chick level for the first week of their life. Then you start dropping the temperature by 5 degrees each week until the chicks are about 5 weeks old. So how do you brood them? Now, there are different brooding equipment that you can get to purchase, or you can make your own brooding equipment. But basically, this is how you want to see it. You need a cardboard enclosure, and you provide water and feed inside that enclosure. You have some form of bedding inside it, and then a heat lamp, right? And that's where you're gonna keep your chicks until after that 2-week period that you're brooding them. So during normal weather, these infrared lamps should be placed about 1 to 1.5 feet above the chicks, and this will provide enough heat. And small flock producers are very innovative. They come up with all kinds of methods in which to brood their birds. This particular person used a plastic container, put the bedding in, put the chicks in, and have the lamp above, and that's where they raised those birds for that first couple of weeks. Then you can place that cardboard ring around that heat source. Make sure that there is enough room to allow the chicks to move away from the light in case it gets too hot. All right, so a diameter of about 6 feet is enough for 50 chicks. Right? This person has more than 50 chicks here. This person have about 12.5, and they just put them in a kiddie pool, right? So you can use anything that you can contain your birds in. Now, how do you keep track of the temperature? Now, you can't keep track of the temperature up here at the light, right? You have to keep track of it down at the level where the chicks are. Because if you check the temperature up here and you say, okay, it's 90 degrees up here, it's colder down here. So you have to check it at that chick's height. And how you adjust the temperature each week, you just raise the lamp, right? So you have the lamp low, you start low, and you keep raising it. And that's how you adjust the temperature. All right, so nutrition is very important when it comes to producing chickens. And chickens love to eat scratch feed such as corn, right? Cracked corn. But that should not be their diet, right? The chicken diet is composed of many different nutrients, and not just the starch that corn will provide. So if you only give them things like scratch corn, that will slow down the growth and development of the birds, and they're going to grow slowly, and some will even die. Now, the type and amount of nutrients that they get depend on the age of the bird and the type of the bird. So if you're growing birds for just meat, the nutrient content in that feed is going to be different from if you're growing birds for laying eggs. So you have different categories of feed. We have the starter feed, which is for very young chicks, and we have the grower feed for chicks that are developing, and the finisher for that adult broiler type birds. And the broiler birds are the ones that we grow for meat. And then we have the layer, mash crumble or pellets for adult layers. Now, a starter ration can be given to the birds from they're a day old until they are 6 weeks old. And you can expect to feed about 4 pounds of starter ration per bird. For that commercial grower ration now, that is fed between 6 to 18 weeks. And I'm saying 18 weeks, not because you're going to grow the birds that you're eating for 18 weeks, but in case you're going to be using some of these birds for laying purposes, you can feed them that grower ration until they are 18 weeks old. And most feed store will carry a combination starter grower ration, and that will work for both the starter and the grower phase of their growth. So if you're growing birds for egg production from 18 weeks onward, you can start feeding that layer ration that will prepare the birds for egg production. Now, it's important not to feed layer ration to younger birds, nor should you feed grower or starter ration to birds that are producing eggs. You know, sometimes you have feed left over from a previous flock, and you say, okay, let me just give them because it's chicken feed. Well, no, remember the nutrients are different. The amount of nutrients that's in these feeds are different, so it's important that you give the right type of feed to the aged bird, because problems that are associated with inadequate nutrition will occur rapidly, and sometimes it's irreversible. So you don't want to have that problem. Birds which are free range, that means you have them outside, you don't have them in cages, you have them running around in the yard. They will supplement their diets with the greens that's in the area that they are, and also with insects. Now, the greens within their enclosure will not last for long, as you saw when I showed you that picture with the pastured flock. But it is okay to give them fresh grass cutting, and I would suggest that you not give them cuttings that has been treated with chemicals. Some people like to give them table scraps, and this will help to reduce your feed costs. However, you don't want to give them a whole lot of this. You should give it to them more as a dessert than as a meal. And you never want to give birds spoiled feed stuff. Food is typically more stable in the cooler parts of the year. I have winter here, but I know in the Caribbean we get cold during the December months. So during that time is when the temperature is cool and it will be clear and dry. So it's more stable that time. But there are some molds that will grow rapidly during low temperature. So you have to make sure that your feed is stored in a cool, dry area. Some of these molds can